Waves just released another NX plugin. If you're unfamiliar with the NX plugin line, it's a virtual mixing environment for those of us that mix and master music on headphones. It helps to create a virtual space that basically takes the sound from being in between our ears and projects it forward to help make it feel a little bit more realistic and more natural. And that, in theory, should help us make better mixing decisions when we're using stuff like reverb or trying to figure out how to pan stuff in a mix. This plugin's called NX Germano, and it's modeled after the premiere room in the Germano Studios in New York City. If you're unfamiliar with that studio, it works with a lot of heavy-hitting pop and rap artists. Some names that you probably have heard of are Nicki Minaj, Lil Wayne, Cardi B, Post Malone, Ariana Grande, Travis Scott, The Weeknd, Lady Gaga. It's incredible, the list of artists that they've worked with. So if you mix or master pop or rap music, Waves made this plugin for you. So in today's video, I'm going to show you all the different features in Waves NX Germano, tell you about the strengths and weaknesses of the plugin, and then we're also going to compare it to every other NX plugin that Waves has ever made, so you can decide if this is the right buy for you. Hey, what's going on? My name is Bobby Balo, and I'm the mixing and mastering engineer at Raytown Productions, and this channel is dedicated to helping you make better sounding music without needing to buy expensive gear or unnecessary plugins. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining me today. Be sure to hit that subscribe button because I drop new videos every single week, and it's going to help you level up the quality of your music. And as a special thank you today for you joining me and spending your time here, I have a gift for you. Since we're talking about plugins and how to get your music sounding professional, I have a guide. It's totally free that has all of my favorite free mixing and mastering plugins. And these are plugins I use almost every single day when I'm professionally mixing music, so I know they sound great. There are compressors, limiters, distortion, delays, reverbs. There's even special effects. There's samples. I mean, this guide has everything you could possibly need. And again, all of the plugins are totally free, and you can just go in the description and grab your free download. All right, so let's just jump on in and check out what this plugin has to offer. So it should look pretty familiar if you've looked at any other Waves NX plugins. It has a very, very similar layout. You have your choice of studio monitors here in this section. You have the ability to rotate around the studio, and it will update in real time. I don't think it's really a necessary feature, but it's really fun if you have the Waves NX head tracker with it. If you don't have the head tracker, you can still just use a webcam, and it works pretty well. We have control over the ambience. This goes from 60 all the way to 160%. And this is just the amount of the impulse response that's being fed into your headphones. The level is important because the impulse response will have some peaks and valleys in it, and that can actually make the audio clip if you're not careful. So you have these left and right meters over here. Keep an eye on that. If you see red bars popping up, you definitely want to pull this level back because odds are you're clipping your audio and it's going to go into your headphones distorted, and then you're not going to make the best mixing decisions. All of these NX series plugins have this really awesome headphone EQ feature. This is great if you have one of these listed headphones. So if you have one of these and you don't have an NX series plugin right now and you're not using any type of headphone EQ correction, it might be worth it just to pick this up just for the headphone correction by itself. Basically, it's going to help flatten out the EQ response of your headphones. Now, something that's very important is this section right here. This is the head modeling section. You really need to measure your head. And there's a guide in the PDF manual that comes with this plugin, shows you how to measure your head. And the reason this is important is because if you change this number, it's going to change their head modeling algorithm, which affects the frequency response that you're hearing in your headphones. So you really should take the time to measure your head. I swear, I've looked at the different impulse responses with these at different numbers. It changes a lot. So be sure to take the time to measure it because it really does help make the sound as realistic as possible. Everything over here in the bottom left deals with head tracking. If you do have the head tracker, you can just turn this on and then a little window will pop up and you can connect your Waves NX head tracker. It's actually really, really fun, like I said, to have it on and listen to music because if you turn around, it really does feel like there's speakers playing at the back of your head. It's remarkable. Or if you have a webcam, you can just choose it from this drop-down menu right here. And that basically is the plugin. I do want to mention really quickly what the studio monitors are. The GA2 are actually the Germano Acoustics APS Eon speakers. Okay. The NS10M are just like what you think. Those are going to be a pair of Yamaha NS10s. You can see them right here in the plugin. And then the Exegy speakers are these huge mains that they have at the top of this plugin. And those are a 4-way system that has dual 18-inch subwoofers. And when you have headphones on and you use these, you can definitely feel the bass pounding out of them. So at this point, if you do not have headphones on, pause this video, put on a pair of headphones, because I'm going to show you what this plugin sounds like. If you don't have headphones, it's going to give you the total wrong feel. So I'm serious, like pause this, go grab your headphones, and then resume, and we'll check this thing out. I want to mention 2 quick things before we demo this plugin. The first is what this plugin is used for. Okay, so it is not used to add ambience to a recorded track as like a reverb or an effect or something like that. It's literally used to help recreate a mixing environment for us if we're mixing on headphones and not on studio monitors. So we do not want this plugin on when we export our song. Okay, it's literally just there to help recreate a virtual space. Now, where should you put this in your plugin chain? This should go after your final limiter on your master bus. So if we look at Cubase, you can see we have all of my NX plugins are on my stereo output bus. And if you're using something like headphone correction by SonarWorks, SonarWorks should actually go after the NX series plugins. Okay, but for this video, we're just going to use the NX plugins. All right, so let's try this out. Let's start by having the plugin bypass, and I'm just going to enable it so you can hear what it does to the sound. Okay, so at this point, you should have your headphones on, and you should be ready to rock. Here we go.
Say hello, I'm your local weed man. I got everything you about to need, man. Feeling bad, well, I got the medicine. Had a bad day, then come to me, man.
Right away, it sounds like you're in a room, right? It's pretty intense. And actually, I think the amount of ambience that we have right out the gate at 100% is too much for my own personal taste. It almost makes it sound a little bit phasey. Something else you might have noticed is that when this plugin is enabled, there's not a lot of low end, right? We hear the sub bass, like underneath 80 hertz, is pretty much missing. If we switch speakers, you'll hear that the sound will change.
Had a good day, then come to me, man. I'ma get you out, you best believe, man.
So both the GA2 and the NS10M speakers, to me, are missing almost all of the sub energy. Now, I was super curious about what is actually going on with these different sets of speakers in the Germano Studio plugin. So I actually extracted the impulse response out of the plugin to look at the frequency response of each of those different sets of speakers. So here is the frequency responses that I pulled out of the plugin, and I've smoothed them by a 6 octave. So just to makes it look a little bit easier to see. This first red line is the Exegy speaker. The green line is the GA2, those Eon speakers. And then the blue line at the bottom here is the NS10M speakers. This bottom axis down here, this is the frequency response. So it goes from 20 hertz all the way up to 20K. So in this y-axis is the SPL level. This is just like the volume at these given frequencies. So the first thing that caught my attention was that the GA2 speakers and the NS10 have huge low frequency roll-offs. Like anything below 70 is pretty drastically reduced in both of those speakers. The Exegy speaker stays pretty flat all the way down to 20 hertz. Okay, we do have a little bit of this bump here. This is like a 5 or 6 dB bump in the sub range from about 70 hertz down to about 35 hertz. So that's where that big air movement is when we go to those Exegy. It's accentuating the subs here. And it also has a dip from about 80 hertz to 100. So when you flip over to the XG speakers and you could really hear what it would sound like in a club that has big drivers, okay? So this is a great way to go and check your mix or your master to make sure you didn't overcook the low end, right? We don't want to have too much sub. Now, something that's also interesting is if you measure the difference between the highest fluctuation peak and the lowest, you can get a range. Okay, that's what these numbers are on this side. So between 80 hertz and 20K, the XG speakers will vary in the frequency response by plus or minus 7 dB. Now that's pretty good for like a typical studio. Many home studios can achieve that kind of flatness in their frequency response. The GA2 speakers were about the same flatness as the XG speakers, but those NS10s were actually the flattest out of all of them, and that's about plus or minus 6 dB, okay? In terms of using this plugin to mix, I would recommend using the NS10s because it has the flattest mid-range here. Get it dialed in just right, and then you can switch over to the XG or maybe the GA2 speakers and then dial in those subs, okay? Now, something I really like about this plugin is that you can check your mix on either the GA2 or the NS10 because it's going to give you a representation of what the song's going to sound like on speakers that don't have huge, powerful subwoofers. So you can think of these as like your average car speaker, and you can think of this as like a club speaker. So this plugin's really nice for pop and hip hop because you can get the club feel and club vibe by having these selected and then check most normal consumer speakers with one of these two. And for me personally, I feel like it's a little bit too much ambience with it. Like I said, it has this slightly like phasey feel to it. So I like the ambience set to actually about 60%. So let me show you what that sounds like.
Okay. Like the way I got the way to touch down on a plane. I spread love around the world and I do it all day.
So you just hear it really tightens it up, doesn't it? All right, so the next part, I'm just going to show you what this Studio Rotate feature does because it's kind of trippy. And if you have head tracking enabled, you can literally just spin around in your chair and it'll feel like you're moving around in a room.
You tell me drugs are bad, and I do you wrong. Check it out, open it, sniff it, break it down, lay it out, roll it, light it, smoke it, hold it.
So it really does feel like you're spinning around in a three-dimensional space, right? It's pretty impressive. And I promise if you have the head tracker on it, it is almost confusing how well it works. So that is the basic overview of NX Germano. So how does it sound compared to all the other NX series plugins? So let's try that right now. Now for this test, I'm going to have the ambience set to 100% for all the different plugins, mainly because Abbey Road Studios 3 doesn't allow you to adjust the ambience. That was one of the earlier NX plugins that didn't have that feature built into it yet. So we're just going to have it at 100% so it gives you the best comparison for all the different plugins. And after that, we'll get into my thoughts on this plugin overall. For this shootout, I'm going to do some of the lower Fi speakers first, and then I'll run through all the plugins and then go on to the next set of speakers that we have. All right, so here we go, starting with Germano Studios.
Say hello, I'm your local weed man. I got everything you about to need, man. Say hello, I'm your local weed man. I got everything you about to need, man. Say hello, I'm your local weed man. I got everything you about to need, man. Say hello, I'm your local weed man. I got everything you about to need, man.
Okay, let's check out the big speakers now.
Say hello, I'm your local weed man. I got everything you about to need, man. Say hello, I'm your local weed man. I got everything you about to need, man. Say hello, I'm your local weed man. I got everything you about to need, man. Say hello, I'm your local weed man. I got everything you about to need, man.
Okay, so that gives you an overall sense of the tone and vibe of this plugin. All right, so what are my thoughts? So should you buy NX Germano? I would say if you haven't invested in any of these NX plugins so far, it's probably a good idea to pick it up, especially if you have a headphone that matches the headphone correction that's built into this plugin. If you plan to mix in 5.1, this is also a good option. The Abbey Road Studios has 5.1 surround sound. That's great, but it doesn't have the ability to dial back the ambience knob if you think that's too much for you. So in that case, I'd actually recommend this for 5.1 mixing over Abbey Road Studios 3. Now, if you have a plugin like CLA NX or Ocean Way Nashville, those I think sound good enough and give you a better sense of space when mixing and mastering on headphones. And my personal favorite so far is the NX CLA plugin. And the reason being is they've taken that lo-fi profile to another level. They actually have a boombox feature here in this particular version. And that really gives you an idea of a lower-fi like cell phone speaker. So let's check out what that sounds like.
I got everything you about to need, man. Feeling bad, well, I got the medicine. Had a bad.
So the CLA 10 sub monitors are a little bit more full range than the Germano. The mains kind of give you a sense of what it would sound like in a club. It's really powerful in the low end, even more so than in Germano. And then the boombox feature of the CLA plugin really gives you an idea of how it sounds off of a laptop or a cell phone or a lo-fi speaker.
Didn't come to me, man.
So if you can't hear your 808s or your bass line with this boombox feature, then you definitely need to go and revisit your mix and figure out a way to get some of those upper bass frequencies to translate. Now, that doesn't mean that NX Germano can't do the same thing. So what I'd recommend if you decide to try this plugin is maybe start mixing on the NS10 studio monitors, get a good foundation to the mix, then switch over to your Exegy, dial in those subs, and then switch back and forth until you find a happy medium between these two. If you find that you tend to like the sound of the GA2 over the NS10, that's totally fine. That's completely your preference. But if we look at the impulse responses, we know that the NS10s are flatter, so that tends to reproduce better in more devices. So those are my thoughts for NX Germano by Waves. If you mix and master music using just headphones, let me know in the comments if you do anything to try to correct the sound. Do you find it harder to mix in headphones versus a set of studio monitors? And also let me know about your thoughts on which NX plugin was your favorite. I want to remind you that I have that awesome free mixing and mastering plugin guide that's sitting for you in the description. So go and download that if that was interesting to you. And with that, I want to thank you so much for your time and attention today. I hope this video helps you make a decision on if you want to jump into the virtual mixing environment or not. And I will see you in another video.